and so forth. So there are multiple security situations going on as we are seeing this unfold there in real time, this remarkable, unprecedented situation at the Capitol building.
The definition of sedition is to try to overturn the rule of law through force, and that is what we are witnessing. Trump supporters who have been lied to by Trump and his minions, individuals like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, lied to by MAGA media, have been incensed and outraged, and they are now resorting to physically trying to storm the Capitol to stop the constitutional process of electors being counted for the person who won the election, Joe Biden, the president-elect. That is what's going on. That is what we are witnessing, and there are a lot of people who are complicit in this. It will not succeed. Joe Biden will be sworn in on January 20th, but at some point, you have to ask yourself, if you're Josh Hawley or Ted Cruz or Matt Gaetz or either of the Murdochs, you have to ask yourself, what am I doing? What am I creating here? What have I unleashed? This is the United States of America, and we're watching protesters try to undermine the course of an election, a constitutional process, through force, by storming the United States Capitol.
Look at that. That is outside. Jacob, sorry to interrupt, but look at those pictures. Have you ever seen anything like that? I mean, these are protesters outside on the steps of the Capitol. They're physically in there.
Well, it's a fitting end to an era that has been characterized by lawlessness. That President Trump, the reason this is happening is because President Trump wanted Vice President Pence to act in a lawless way in his procedural duties today, and now his supporters, in their anger, are basically breaking into the Capitol, forcing members of Congress to go into hiding because they've been, as you said, Jake, fed lies.
I apologize for interrupting, Abby. I just want to say the mayor of Washington, D.C., Mayor Muriel Bowser, is now ordering a 6 p.m. curfew in Washington, D.C., because of these protests, which have turned violent. Individuals who have been fed lies, as you noted, now storming the Capitol to try to stop the constitutional process. Please continue.
And just to be clear, President Trump has tweeted in the last few minutes, but he has said nothing to disavow this,
no,
to tone down the violence. Exactly. In fact, he has been upping the rhetoric against Mike Pence. And that is it's beyond irresponsible. He has a responsibility. These are his supporters. They're carrying Trump flags. So he could say to them, stop, back away, don't do this, and he won't do it.
We are watching an attempted sedition. We are watching an attempt at a bloodless coup in the United States. Trump supporters stopping the constitutional process, the counting of electors. The mayor has invoked a 6 p.m. curfew. More police reinforcements are coming to Capitol Hill. Let's go down to Brian Todd, who is on the scene. Brian, where are you, and what are you seeing?
Jake, we're on the east side of the Capitol, the east front, the east steps, and you see all that huge group of protesters on the steps. You can also see some Capitol Hill police on the balcony to the side. They don't appear to have the numbers to deal with this right now, but they're donning riot gear. We saw some smoke deployed earlier, not sure exactly how that started, but you can see the Capitol. There are some Capitol Hill police up there, probably awaiting orders on what to do, and we are told that there are reinforcements coming from different law enforcement up here, but they are not here yet, I can tell you that. There was a group of DC police, like 20 or so, that showed up here a short time ago, went around the side of the building, and we believe went inside, but we're not sure. But clearly, as far as the police that we're seeing up there on that balcony, they are not moving. They're observing right now. They've donned some riot gear, and they have not moved yet to move these protesters up the steps. Let's have Christine, our photojournalist, Pam. You have some cheers going up here. I was going to show you another set of steps, but let's see what's happening here. Not sure what started the cheering, but clearly it's, this has gotten out of hand. These protesters got up the steps. They breached the barricades, more than an hour ago. Got up the steps, some of them got inside. we did see a large group of Metropolitan Washington police go inside the building, we believe. So they may be trying to deal with that from the inside first before they move out here. But they have not shown up in huge numbers at this plaza yet. We also know that on the west side of the Capitol, it's very, very tense, with a lot of flashbangs going on. Protesters breached the barricades there. Some of them climbed up on these risers that were set up for the inauguration. And we are just waiting to see when law enforcement shows up and in what kind of numbers, because right now, I can tell you, they don't have the numbers here to deal with this crowd.
All right, Alex Marquardt is also on the scene, and I'm getting texts, as I'm sure Dan and Abby are as well, from members of Congress, Trump supporters, Biden supporters, Democrats, Republicans, who are stunned. They have been told by Capitol Police they have to shelter in place in their office. Is it because of a terrorist attack on the United States? It's because Trump supporters are violently, in some cases, forcing themselves into the United States Capitol, stopping the constitutional proceedings of the counting of the electoral votes for Joe Biden, the president-elect. Alex Marquardt, where are you and what are you seeing?
Yeah, we're still on the western side of the Capitol. It is surreal. It is the wall of the Capitol.
All right, Alex, your phone's going in and out. We're going to check back with you when your connection's better. Let's go to Manu Raju, who I think is inside the Capitol building. Manu, where are you? What are you seeing?
Yeah, well, Jake, we are been told to ordered to stay inside our offices, not to allowed to leave because of protesters now storming both the House and the Senate. They are inside the building, an unprecedented situation, something that lawmakers are stunned themselves to see, and we're getting word about how some of this was communicated to lawmakers while the debate was happening over the certification of the electoral votes in the House chamber. According to pool reports that just came into us moments ago, the officer told lawmakers, House members, that they may need to duck under their chairs. He said that protesters, we now have, this was what the officer said, we now have individuals that have breached the Capitol building. They are in the rotunda area. The rotunda is, of course, the big dome that separates the House and the Senate. And inside that is just, feet away from both chambers. There were many protesters there, which that's what prompted the Capitol Police to warn lawmakers to cover themselves. They said at that point there was no threat to the chamber, but seeing the pictures that are coming in, Jake and Wolf, there are so many protesters that are just feet away from where House members are and where they have been told to essentially lock down inside the chamber themselves. If there's concern about some of these protesters getting onto the House floor, these House lawmakers have been told to go into the cloakrooms. Those cloakrooms are where the actual members from each side gather. They meet. They have when they go off of the House floor. So they're urging them to take cover there if necessary. The Senate side of the Capitol also concerns because there are many protesters around the Senate floor right now, and that's why the proceedings of the Senate have gone into recess as well, and senators are sitting inside the chamber themselves. Nobody's allowed to go in. The reporters aren't allowed to go and see what's happening. But at the moment, a very, very tense situation where police here clearly have been overrun by these protesters who have stormed the building, stormed the barricades, have walked past the security, and are now all over this building right now. The question is, how long does it last? But at the moment, people are being told, stay inside, stay safe, make very little noise, don't draw attention to yourself, because they're not sure who these individuals are, what they possess, if they have any firearms, or what their intentions are at the moment as they struggle to get the situation under control.
It is an absolutely shameful, disgusting situation that we are witnessing here, but eminently predictable, with the outgoing president of the United States refusing to accept reality, refusing to concede defeat, attacking every single Republican who gets in his way, including his own vice president. Pamela Brown, tell us more about the security situation on Capitol Hill.
Well, I can tell you right now, Jake, there are discussions about evacuating the Vice President, Pence, given how unwieldy the situation and potentially dangerous the situation has become. It's unclear right now as to whether Pence has officially been evacuated from the building. But what I can tell you is that at the very least, Jake, there are discussions ongoing as we speak about getting him out of there. And if it hasn't already happened yet, it very well could soon. That's where we are. Of course, Pence is the presiding officer there today over the certification, the electoral count. And clearly this was not how officials planned for this to go, for the vice president to potentially be evacuated from the building. Of course, it's worth noting this is all happening as the White House has not commented. The president has not commented or said anything directly about the chaos that's going on at the White House.
Well, he did just tweet something. It's not a call to stand down. And let me go to Jim Acosta at the White House now to bring us news on that, because just a couple minutes ago, Jim, the president, he did not say, please stop what you're doing, but he did issue a tweet, rather weak one, I might add.
It is rather flaccid, Jake, but the president has broken his silence, I suppose you could say, finally on all of this, after this has been going on for over an hour. The president tweeting just a few moments ago, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful, with an exclamation mark. But as you said, Jake, he is not telling these protesters to leave the Capitol. And in fact, earlier this afternoon, when he was down on the National Mall, he was egging on these supporters to go down to the Capitol and make their voices heard. And of course, now they are storming the Capitol in a way that looks like open rebellion in Washington, D.C., with no potential to knock this down, it seems at this point. I was just talking with a Trump advisor a few moments ago who was just outraged over this and said, shame on POTUS for throwing gasoline on this fire and not doing anything to stop it. I will tell you, Jake, just a few moments ago, we saw that Marine stationed outside the West Wing. That's usually an indication that the president is in the Oval Office. You can almost take it to the bank, Jake, that the president of the United States is watching all of this unfold, watching what he egged on unfold, and is essentially watching the world burn just 2 weeks before he leaves office. This is the kind of situation, Jake, where the president should be going into the briefing room. You know this all too well as a former White House correspondent yourself. He should be going into the briefing room and telling these protesters to stop and go home. He is not doing that. That makes him responsible for what's happening right before our eyes right now, Jake.
Absolutely, Jim. I mean, when that Trump advisor you spoke to said that the shame on POTUS for pouring fuel on the fire, I mean, President Trump has been spilling fuel like the Exxon Valdez. I mean, this is not like some new development. He created this mess.
This is a bonfire of the insanities that we're watching in the nation's capital right now, and it all flows from Trump. He has been lighting these matches for weeks now. He was lighting these matches down on the National Mall earlier today, telling people to go down to the Capitol, telling them at one point, misleading them into thinking that he was going to join them down on the Capitol. So it was essentially an invitation to join the President of the United States down at the Capitol to give these lawmakers a piece of their minds. And now this is what we're left with. This is the ugly aftermath of what we're left with. And Jake, what is the plan to get these people out of there? My goodness, on June the 1st, the president said federal law enforcement forces, National Guard, they tear gas, they pummel people to get people out of Lafayette Park, get people away from the church so he can hold a Bible in front of the church. There appears to be no plan in place at this point to clear all of these capitals away, all these protesters away from the Capitol. This is just bedlam on the streets of the nation's capital. This is Trump's rebellion.
It's absolutely, and it is the natural development of all of this. So many cowardly Republican congressmen in that building trying to appease the president and his angry base by rebelling and committing an attempted act of sedition. And here is the physical manifestation of it. Maharaja, you have some news.
Yeah, it seems to be very, very tense and very serious outside the House floor. There's a report that is coming from the pool reporters who are on that side of the Capitol saying there's an armed standoff at the House front door. The police officers have their guns drawn at someone who is trying to reach the front door. They tried to reach the main doors, but there was a heavy barricade and police presence. But to repeat, according to the House pool reports that we're getting in right now, there's an armed standoff at the House front door. Police officers have their guns drawn at someone who is trying to reach the front door. Now, we're also told the House lawmakers who had been sheltering in place inside the House chamber while this was all unfolding as they were debating the election certification, they have been told to evacuate. They're being evacuated. That's what we've been told. We've also been told that Mike Pence, the Vice President of the United States, who's presiding over the Senate chamber, he has also been evacuated. It's unclear where all of the senators are at the moment, but a lot of the protesters, they're all over this building. They have breached the security. There are many of them outside the House chamber, but at the moment, this serious situation of an armed standoff outside the House floor, we'll see. Hopefully this gets resolved peacefully, but police are overrun by these protesters that ask for reinforcements to deal with this situation that is escalating and going out of control here, guys.
It sounds absolutely awful. Dan Abash, you just got some news from Congressman Jerry Connolly, Democrat of Virginia.
Yeah, just to add to what Manu was saying, he's reporting that the House members are being evacuated from the House chamber. One member, Jerry Connolly, says that they were given gas masks on the House floor. These are members of Congress. They're doing their constitutional duty to try to certify the next president of the United States given gas masks. And the reason is because tear gas was used in the rotunda. Probably as a response to, I wouldn't even call them protesters, anarchists.
Let me bring in former police commissioner of the police force in both D.C. and Philadelphia, Charles Ramsey. Chief Ramsey, I guess the first question I have for you is how would one even try to get control of the situation so that the House and the Senate can resume their constitutional duty that has to happen today according to law?
Well, I mean, they're going to need to get reinforcements, no question about that. Start by clearing the outside, get the people outside away from the building, get that secured, and the ones inside, you got to force them out. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. You cannot allow this to continue. They're overwhelmed right now. There are MOUs that are in place with both Metropolitan Police, Park Police, the National Capital Region, agencies from both Virginia as well as Maryland. I don't know who they're calling. I'm trying to reach out now to get more information. But they need to bring in a lot more resources and get this thing settled down, get it cleared out. And it's time for them to just get people cleared out of there. It's not going to look pretty, but they got to get it done.
They are telling members of Congress to shelter in place. They are evacuating members of the House and Senate from doing their constitutionally prescribed duties. There are fights. There are people breaching police lines. There are people climbing up walls. Have you ever seen anything like this?
No, and I don't think anybody else has either. In fact, I know they haven't, not in the United States. I mean, maybe in some third world country. But, you know, here you got a situation where the president's stirring the pot. He's got his allies in there. They have unleashed something that they cannot control. And they need to understand that. Now, control can be regained. And again, I'm telling you now, it's not going to be pretty. And if I was there, I guarantee you, we would do whatever we had to do to get them the hell out of there. But, you know, they never should have gotten this far. Never should have gotten this far.
President Trump he tweeted a comment, not what I think you would want if you were the police chief right now. He wrote, "Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful." It's odd that he said stay peaceful given the fact that this crowd is not peaceful. So there's no way that they could stay peaceful. They have already stormed the Capitol. What would you want President Trump to tweet right now to de-escalate this?
What I want the president to do is shut the hell up and get out of the way. I mean, the guy is he's like cancer. You know, how much more can you give me? You know, at some point in time, if he's not going to do the right thing and tell him to get the hell out of the Capitol and act like they've got some sense, then just shut up. He stirred him up. He got this whole thing going. This is as close to a coup attempt as this country has ever seen. That's what you're looking at, folks. That is what you're looking at. And it's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And a lot of people are responsible for this.
Well, absolutely. This is sedition. We have been saying this now for weeks. This is sedition. This is attempting to undermine the rule of law through use of force.
They've done it.
And
They're not attempting. They have done it.
Right. Right. Is there any way President...
I mean, this is crazy.
Go ahead.
They got to gain control. They got to gain control quickly or it's going to get worse. This is not even nightfall yet. And you still got to deal with that.
Right, you need to get them out. You need to get them out of there before night. Before night, that's an excellent observation.
It's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse.
But why haven't they? I mean, we knew this day was coming. We knew that President Trump likes to stir the pot. That's how you put it. I would say he likes to create stochastic terrorism. He likes to demonize and incentivize bad actions, right?
We knew the day was coming, but I don't think anybody could have anticipated that people would have gone this far to seriously overrun the United States Capitol. I just don't think, and I'm sure the Capitol Police had extra people on duty, went to 12-hour shifts, all days off canceled. You know, every department in that region has activated their emergency plans. But who could have anticipated this? I mean, I'm watching it, and it's like watching a bad B movie. I haven't seen anything like it. If I seem a little upset, it's because I am. I mean, this is the United States of America. That's our United States Capitol.
You know, I think we all feel this way.
To protect and defend it.
Well, I think we all feel that way. You might feel also something different because you were once the police chief of the Metropolitan Police Department here in D.C., and so this is in many ways, I would think, your worst nightmare and something that you worked very hard with all of your police officers to make sure never happened.
Exactly right. I mean, we had major demonstrations. If you remember back in the IMF World Bank days, I mean, we had major demonstrations in the city, and some of them got pretty close to losing it. But we never had anything even come close to coming this far. And again, they have to gain control. They take the gloves off and do what they got to do, but they got to get control and get that Capitol back.
The Capitol Police are asking for additional law enforcement assistance. I imagine that would be the Metropolitan Police Department. It would be the U.S. Secret Service. Perhaps even the National Guard, the U.S. Park Police, of course.
Park Police.
And what would you do? How do you clear it out? Obviously, people have a right to peaceably protest. That's not what this is because they have stormed the Capitol and stopped congressional action. I don't know that anything like this has happened since the days of the Vietnam War, frankly, when protesters for the Vietnam War used to go in there and block the halls of Congress to try to stop proceedings.
Yeah, they're going to have to really get enough resources there so they can start to move the crowd. And they're going to have to push. I don't know if they're going to use gas or not, but, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you do what you have to do to clear the Capitol.
And let me make clear.
You just can't have this.
Let me make clear. I'm not comparing what's going on here to Vietnam War protesters. Those people were trying to stop a war, and these people are trying to start one.
Yeah, but I think what you're saying, because we're both old enough to remember, those are protests that did get out of hand. They got very violent on both sides, both from law enforcement and from protesters. And so I haven't seen anything like it since then, obviously. But this is unprecedented, even for that era. It didn't go that far, even in that era.
No, and those were generally peaceful protesters, and storming the Capitol is not peaceful protest. Chief Ramsey, thanks so much. Stay there. We're going to come back to you. I want to go back to Manu Raju, who's in Capitol Hill. And Manu, I'm hearing from a lot of Democrats and Republican Congress people who are frankly disgusted, shocked, and some of them are even scared.
Yeah, a lot of people are scared, Jake, because this is an escalating, chaotic situation. Police do not have it under control. There is, we're told, an armed standoff outside the House floor. It's unclear exactly how that has been resolved at the moment. There are members inside the House chamber. It's been locked. Other members have been evacuated to various parts of the Capitol complex. Senators also have been evacuated as well, and many locking themselves in their offices, told not to leave. Now, we were also just told that the members who are in the House, they have been told that there is tear gas in the rotunda, and to push back against any of these protesters, there's tear gas, so potentially that could become an issue here as the situation develops. And they've been told that there are masks under their seats in the House chamber that they can certainly put on if they need to. So there's a lot of. There are members who have been told to go to shelter in place. Everybody has been told to shelter in place in this building. We have all been told we cannot leave this building because of the fact that there are protesters in all parts of the Capitol, on the House side and the Senate side, through all levels. There have been reports of violent clashes between protesters and demonstrators, protesters and police trying to arrest some of these demonstrators, seeing violent activity, violent interactions between the two sides, and just feet from where the House was just gathering to debate the certification of Joe Biden's election victory, that armed standoff occurring. Again, that is unclear how that is resolved, but they've been told there is tear gas that's ready to be deployed if necessary as this escalating situation continues here, Jay.
If you're just joining us, it is almost 3 o'clock, and normally the House and Senate would be counting the electoral votes for the president-elect, Joe Biden, in this case, but that has stopped. The proceedings have stopped because Trump supporters have stormed the U.S. Capitol. There are violent confrontations going on. Members of Congress have been told to shelter in place. Many members of Congress, Trump supporters and Biden supporters alike, are appalled and scared. And frankly, it is appalling and it is frightening. We are witnessing an attempt at sedition. We are witnessing an attempt at a forceful overthrow of the U.S. government, or at least of the proceedings, the U.S. constitutionally prescribed proceedings of the counting of electoral votes. Let's go to Brian Todd, who is there amidst the chaos. Brian, what are you witnessing?
Well, Jake, if you can see, our photojournalist Christine Leon is going to kind of zoom in to past this flag when they go by. You can see protesters standing on top of some government vehicles that are parked at the foot of the stairs here on the east side. Now, in the last couple of minutes, we have seen some protesters make their way down the stairs. They're taking their time going down, so they really do not believe they're being pushed away by any law enforcement. And Christine, if you can pan to your left there, you can see the Capitol Hill police on the left side of the balcony there. They've been standing there for several minutes, waiting for orders, seemingly. Some of them have donned riot gear, but they are, right now, observers to this situation. Now, again, the crowd, some of them have left the stairs, but they're still, clearly, as you can see, a lot of protesters on the stairs. We can also tell you that they have made their way up 3 sets of stairs here on the east side of the Capitol. 2 on either side of us, but not as dense as the crowd is not as dense on the other side, on the other stairways, as it is here. But these people clearly are emboldened. They don't feel any urgency to move. And the real question here, Jake, is when is law enforcement going to show up in force to try to get these people out? We do know that the mayor has instituted a curfew for 6 p.m., but that's a few hours from now. The question is, when are they going to show up to try to move some of these people out? They may be trying to address the situation inside the Capitol first before they move on these people, because we did see some Washington Metropolitan Police show up, about 20 of them, a short time ago, and they moved around to the side of the building, seemingly to try to go inside. So they may be inside dealing with the situation inside before they move outside and deal with this. But these people don't show any inclination at all to move. And right now, they're not being forced to move at all. Jake?
For months, the president and his supporters on Capitol Hill and MAGA media have been lying to the American people, lying to Trump supporters about election fraud that did not happen. Court after court ruled that there was no evidence of it. The states have certified the election. The electors met. The Electoral College met. The election is over. Joe Biden won. Donald Trump lost. And yet, this is what he has unleashed. You cannot put the genie back in the bottle when you unleash it, especially one that is fueled and motivated by lies and unhinged conspiracy theories. Wolf?
You know, it's really sad, Jake, that just a little while ago when the president was speaking over at that rally on the ellipse not far from the White House, he uttered these words. He said, "We're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength and you have to be strong," as he encouraged these protesters to walk down to the U.S. Capitol. And now we see what's going on, something totally unprecedented here in the United States Capitol. Protesters not only taking over the outside of Capitol Hill, but inside as well. And they're endangering right now a lot of people. Caitlin Collins is covering all of this at the White House. Caitlin, what else is going on? Where is the President of the United States?
Right now, Wolf, we are told he is sitting in the Oval Office. Of course, he has only sent one tweet on the matter that we are seeing unfold on Capitol Hill right now, with his own supporters wearing his sweatshirts and waving his flags. He has not called on them to leave the buildings that they have breached, given what we are seeing going on. These reports of armed standoffs, breaking windows, going into the chambers where, of course, restrictions are in place and they have breached security. The president is sitting in the Oval Office right now and has not instructed his own supporters to get out of the buildings. He only tweeted one tweet about respecting Capitol Hill police. Clearly, these people are not doing that, Wolf, given they have breached these barricades. And even his recently departed communications director, Wolf, is calling on him to do more. Alyssa Farah just tweeted a few moments ago, said, "Condemn this now, Donald Trump. You are the only one they will listen to for our country." The president has declined to do so. Wolf, we should note, of course, before all this happened, the vice president was there on the Senate floor. We are told he's been evacuated, but his office has declined to say where he is, and we have not seen him return to the White House yet. And just to put a final note on this, the Capitol is on lockdown. We are told the White House is in an elevated security posture. That means you can still come and go, but there are armed division officers with assault rifles patrolling the grounds at this moment, Wolf. To do?
Well, some of the people that I was walking with, actually, Patty, because as I was on the Constitution Avenue, it was sort of a party atmosphere. There was music playing, people were dancing. And then the numbers built as we got to the Capitol, and as we sort of started to squeeze through, I could hear people around me saying, "Oh my goodness, they've taken over. Look at that." And there would be cheers as they'd see the man on the scaffolding, and then at one point, a large American flag was hung from the scaffolding. That was one that the protesters brought with them, and so there was enormous cheer at that point. So my feeling here is that at least those of us on the ground are watching it unfold as it happens. There perhaps was a plan, but maybe just those who tweet.
You described the atmosphere as jubilant. I have to say, I'm watching these scenes and it looks pretty tense, especially the standoffs with law enforcement. But that's not what you're feeling. Does it feel scary, tense to you where you are?
No, well, I'm not right there where the law enforcement is engaging the people who are actually on the building. I'm down on the ground in front of the building in the grassy area and on the pavement that leads to the Capitol building, and I don't get a sense of danger down here. Now, as we were pushing forward, somebody was shouting, "If you're going to the front, bring water, take this water with you." So I think they must have been trying to respond to some perhaps tear gas and some flashings that had happened before we came. I seen a ton of smoke, and I think it was a flare, but I haven't.
Okay, Barbara, your line is breaking up. I know that there are a lot of people down there, and they're probably all competing for Wi-Fi and cell phone signals. So we'll come back to you when we can re-establish that. I just want to show you what happened about half an hour ago when protesters started swarming up the steps. They broke through a police barricade. Capitol Police, by the way, the US Capitol has its own police force, and DC knew this was going to happen. As residents of Washington, we had been warned not to go down there. So the police were ready, but look, those protesters just broke through that police line, went straight up the steps. Those are the steps. You may have seen them from pictures, from movies around the world. That is where the inauguration takes place. They'd come from the White House. They storm up the steps. And then I think we can show you as well, perhaps our gallery in London can show you, these are the gas masks. These are riot police coming in to help with gas masks, but of course by this time they had actually stormed through the Capitol Police line, so they're kind of coming in to try and help the situation now. And then I think our director in London can show you the pictures from inside Capitol Hill, from inside the building. This is Statuary Hall. This is famous entryway building inside the US Capitol, and it's kind of slightly bizarre, I have to say. I've been watching these pictures for the last 45 minutes or so, and the protesters are sort of just wandering through. I mean, they look like they're on a kind of tourist visit or something, wandering through. I can't see any sign of security there. Then normally you would expect security to be there, but there's a couple of officers, but they're not really doing very much to try and stop them. I guess they can't. They're wandering through, and they are trying to make their way to that famous rotunda, which is where, until about an hour ago, the members of Congress had been holding a debate on the outcome of the US election. That is what we had expected to be covering today. Instead, we are covering these scenes of protesters storming the building. My colleague Tara O'Neill is outside Capitol Hill. Tara, where are you and what are you seeing?
Hi, Catty. I'm outside the west side of the Capitol building.
Bring your camera over there.
The
FBI just shot a woman right there.
As you can hear, there's somebody here shouting at us that the FBI has just shot someone. I don't know that,
Right
I can't verify that. But I can introduce you to a gentleman called Ryan. Excuse me, Ryan. A gentleman here who said he went into the building earlier. I was here the past hour or so. It was relatively calm to begin with. And then it was like an organic moment when suddenly let's go.
Okay, so that line unfortunately breaking up. If we can get back to Tara, we will do, because it'd be very interesting to hear from some of these supporters of Donald Trump. That gentleman had been inside the building and had gone through the police barricades. We are hoping as well to speak as soon as possible to US Congressman Brendan Boyle. I know that we are trying to get hold of him. He is at the moment holed up inside his office, has been told to lock the doors. As soon as we have him on the line, I will get him on the program too, because I want to hear from members of Congress about what happened. He was in that room during the discussion that was taking place about the election procedures, so we want to hear actually how that panned out. But these protesters still not going anywhere, and we are waiting. The only tweet that we have had from President Trump so far has been one urging his supporters to support the Capitol Police. Here is what President Trump tweeted about 30 minutes ago. Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. But he's not calling on them to stand down. I don't know if at this stage even that would make much difference. President Trump gave a barn burner of a speech a couple of hours ago outside the White House to these supporters, in which he was saying, we will never concede. He was kind of burning down the house of the Republican Party, criticizing Mike Pence, criticizing Republicans for being weak, for not fighting enough. The crowd started shouting, stop the steal. The crowd was shouting, fight for Trump. And he was egging them on, frankly. I mean, that was what President Trump was doing just a couple of hours ago. And now we have this. The two are not unconnected. These supporters came from President Trump's speech, and they made their way to Capitol Hill, and then they breached the police barricades and stormed the building up on, and this is the result of what we are seeing. So we can speak to, I think we can hear Matt Fuller, who is a reporter from Huffington Post. He was inside the chamber. And he says that there were shouts from the police, so there were shots of the police were shouting that shots have been fired, and that they are trying to negotiate with protesters and talk them down.
He has also tweeted this video, but let's take a quick listen to this. Yes, I mean, it's clearly all very chaotic inside there, so it's kind of hard to get a real sense of what's happening, and I don't know, I can't tell you with surety what is exactly happening around the rotunda at the moment, except that the congressman I spoke to about half an hour ago had been told to leave the building. They've all been put onto lockdown. No one can get in or out, ostensibly, although clearly the protesters are getting in, and it seems like the protesters are trying to make their way to the rotunda. What we don't know, and it was strange watching those pictures of protesters kind of wandering through Statuary Hall, which is a building, a room in the Capitol, it's not entirely clear what the plan is, what the strategy is, other than to get a huge amount of attention, which they are getting. I mean, the eyes of the world are on these scenes in Washington now. America's allies and adversaries are watching these scenes, are watching these chaotic scenes of democracy not happening as it is meant to happen. As I said earlier, I've covered now 5 American elections. I've never seen this happen before. Even in the election of 2000, which was also a very contested election, there was a peaceful transition of power back in the year 2000 between Bill Clinton and George W. Bush. And in fact, it was to this day that Al Gore handed over power and certified the results of the Electoral College. My colleague Lebo De Seco, I think, is inside now the Capitol building. Lebo, where are you and what are you seeing?
Well, we're in the cafeteria at the moment. We were evacuated from the spot where all the media were reporting on the proceedings today. As you've explained to the audience, the certification process has now been suspended. We have had the members of the House of Representatives and the Senate cleared from the floor. Mike Pence as well has been taken away for his own safety. You've seen the pictures of protesters swarming the building. I never thought I'd see anything like this in my life, certainly not in the United States of America. Donald Trump has tweeted telling his supporters to respect the police, but he's not called them off. He's not told them to stop doing what they're doing. And it was on his kind of encouragement after his speech earlier today that they decided to come down here. I think unprecedented doesn't even cover what we've experienced now. Police have told us this is not likely to be a short process either. So, yeah, quite something.
Okay, and do you know how long you're going to be there, Lebo? What are the police? Are you getting kind of communication from Capitol Hill Police?
Well, police are saying that it's not going to be a short process, so that could be any amount of time, but it just kind of goes to show their level of concern. Obviously, they want to make sure that everybody is safe. That's why we have been asked to stay in this area. You can kind of see this is just basically the cafeteria. Members of the House of Representatives, the Senate as well, have been told to clear the floors. As I said, Mike Pence too has been taken away for his own safety, but we don't know how long this is going to go on, but very serious. The police are taking this very seriously.
Okay, Lebo, stay safe, sit tight, we'll come back to you. We want to speak to Congresswoman Nancy Mace. She is joining us now on the phone. Congresswoman, thank you very much for joining us. Where are you? Are you safe? What's happening?
I am safe. My staff is safe. In fact, I just sent a text to my family, my 2 children who were back home, and let them know that mommy was safe. I am in my office at Cannon office building. We are in lockdown mode, so we cannot come and go at this juncture because protesters have stormed the Capitol. They were attacking Capitol Police and law enforcement, at the Capitol, and so we're now in lockdown mode. If you're in a building on the campus of the Capitol, you aren't going anywhere right now.
And were you in the rotunda when the discussion was taking place, when the protesters stormed the building?
I was in the Capitol for the joint session, and as soon as it was recessed for both chambers to have the debate on the objection to Arizona, I made my way back to my office. But at that point, right after the joint session was put into recess, the Cannon office building was evacuated because there was a threat about a half block away at the Republican headquarters, the National Republican Congressional Committee headquarters. There was a threat there, so we were evacuated. The moment we got back from the evacuation, we were put into lockdown because of the protesters storming the Capitol. This is a sad day for America.
Congresswoman, you're right, this is a sad day for America, and people around the world are watching these scenes, and they cannot, frankly, believe what they are seeing. We expect a peaceful transition of democracy in this country. It is what America is famous for, and it has been a huge credit of this country, and it's not happening right now. How does it feel being a member of Congress from South Carolina? You come up here to Washington, D.C., I imagine your family is still back down there, knowing that this is happening and not in the way it should.
No, and I'm devastated and I'm heartbroken by what I'm seeing right now. We cannot use violence against violence. Two wrongs do not make a right. And millions of people have been misled to believe that we were voting today on voter fraud, and we were not. This was simply an administrative procedural vote to certify the votes of the Electoral College in 50 states that were certified by those states. Congress does not have a role to overturn the election or the Electoral College, and neither does the Vice President. But millions of people were misled on this today, and so the expectations were high, and the outcome was a very low bar for our nation. And I understand the anger and the frustrations. I'm pissed off that we didn't win the presidential election. We had one of the greatest economies in the world previous to COVID-19, and during COVID-19 we had Operation Warp Speed. We did so much good over the last 4 years. We lost the Senate last night, and after the actions we're seeing today, I think we're going to lose so much ground on all the progress that we made as a nation under President Trump's under his presidency, and I'm pissed off. This is not the way. This is not okay. I'm not condoning the violence. I'm worried about the constituents that came up from South Carolina here for the protest. They wanted to be peacefully protesting today, and everyone has that right as a citizen of the United States. It's their First Amendment right. But people's lives are at risk. The rhetoric that's been used leading up to today, it's wrong. And I know personally for me, my life has been threatened on social media. Others have been threatened. This is wrong.
Congresswoman, you're a Republican, you're a supporter of President Trump. What's your message to him right now?
I am asking for a peaceful message today to calm folks down. If we want to investigate and get to the bottom of voter fraud, this is not the way to do it. And if we're serious about investigating and looking into the things that are very much wrong with the electoral process, the election process in this country, then we need to plead with those to take a deep breath, to calm down, so that we can do the work necessary in Congress to make that a reality.
Okay, Congresswoman Nancy Mace, thank you very much for joining us. Obviously, this is a very tense situation for the Congresswoman. Thank you. We appreciate your time. Strong language being used there. We apologize for that. Obviously, this is a difficult situation for members who are inside that building at the moment. President Trump, as the Congresswoman had pointed out, has tweeted about the protests. Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. We can now speak to another member of Congress from the other side of the aisle. Brendan Boyle is in lockdown as well at his office on Capitol Hill from the Democratic side. He joins me now by phone. Congressman, thank you very much for joining me. Can you tell me what happened to you over the last hour or so?
Well, Tammy, nice to be back with you, though I wish the circumstances were different. Shortly after 1 o'clock, we obviously went into joint session, as we've done every 4 years since 1789, the election of President George Washington. And never from then till now have we had something like this. About 15 or 20 minutes into the session, obviously you could hear the commotion that the U.S. Capitol had been breached. We went into recess. I'm in my office in Longworth, literally working on the remarks I have to give later this evening when Pennsylvania's objection comes up in the order. And as I'm writing about the importance of defending our democracy and making sure it doesn't commit suicide, I hear those who would want to pull off a coup literally just outside my window, and sirens and little explosions going on. It's just chaos, and never in 1,000 years Did I ever think I would see this at the United States Capitol?
Congressman, President Trump in the last few minutes has tweeted again. He's saying, I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful, no violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you. Is that enough?
Well, isn't that nice? After spending an hour just outside the White House, whipping up this crowd and telling them to go march on the United States Capitol, and doing everything he can to incite this and to bring this on. And by the way, he also tweeted, when it had was already underway, he sent out a tweet blaming Mike Pence and was continuing to incite this. And you know, the people who are here are obviously a danger, but the greater danger are those who incite them by feeding them a steady diet of misinformation and lies. That is the ultimate cancer we need to finally end in the United States.
Ted Cruz, the senator from Texas, Republican senator from Texas, who was mounting an objection to the certification of Joe Biden as president and was leading this protest against the certification of Joe Biden as president, one of the senators who was leading this, has also tweeted, those storming the Capitol need to stop now. The Constitution protects peaceful protest, but violence is always wrong, and those engaged in violence are hurting the cause they say they support. Do you think that some of your Republican colleagues in the House of Representatives and in the Senate underestimated what they were unleashing when they said that they were going to object to the certification of Joe Biden as president?
Yes, I do. I'm reminded of that JFK quote, those who seek to ride the tiger end up inside. And you know, for a number of years, from Rush Limbaugh and other far-right radio and other far-right media outlets, and certain ambitious politicians on the right who realize they can tap into this and that it can help further their ambition. I think they were naive about what it can also unleash once you tap into those dark forces.
And of course, it's not just America's allies who are watching this somewhat askance. I know that this is playing on the BBC. We are playing this live, but it's going to be playing on channels across Europe as well. And there's going to be quite a lot of surprise amongst America's allies seeing this. But it's going to be watched by America's adversaries too, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no question about that. And, you know, I have a number of friends in the UK and the rest of Europe and around the world who look up to America as a beacon of democracy and a country that attempts to, albeit imperfectly, promote democracy worldwide and promote human rights. The rest of the world must be looking at this today and thinking and wondering, is democracy still alive in the United States?
Did law enforcement just fail on Capitol Hill? I mean, we knew these protests were going to happen, right?
You know, there's no question that there was a failure. And look, I have a lot of respect for U.S. Capitol Police. They generally do a great job. But these protests, if you can still call them that, were no surprise. I mean, the street closures started yesterday in Washington, D.C. We were all getting ready for them. We had certain security procedures just internally in my office that we put in place. We were already advised that we should use the tunnels and not go outside throughout the day. But the fact that this crowd was able to breach the U.S. Capitol within about 15 or 20 minutes of us starting, I think it's pretty clear the U.S. Capitol Police and their leadership vastly underestimated the sort of crowd and the threat it posed.
Are you concerned, Congressman? I know that you are shut inside your own office with your staffers. Are you concerned for the safety of you and your staffers today?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm more worried about, and I'm not saying this to attempt to sound brave, but at least I ran for office, and while I never imagined this would happen, it is my name on the door. I should be here. But I have 3 staffers, all of whom are in their 20s, all of whom believe in public service. And I had to quickly huddle together with, make sure they're okay, and talk about where they can hide in our office in case the worst happens and someone gets in.
I cannot imagine when you were elected that this is what you thought you were going to go through. Congressman Brendan Boyle, thank you very much for joining the BBC.
Thank you.
So, There you heard it from a congressman who was ushered out under tight security in his own office here in America. What a country that prides itself on being the cradle of democracy. America's allies, as the congressman said, are watching. America's adversaries are also watching these scenes of supporters of Donald Trump breaching security on the steps of the Capitol and storming inside, and we have had confirmed reports of shots inside the Capitol. So you're watching these live pictures still, and within the last few minutes, President Trump has tweeted again. He said, "I am asking for everyone at the US Capitol to remain peaceful, no violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue." You've had similar tweets now as well from senior Republicans, even Republicans who had been opposing Joe Biden being certified. We have heard, by the way, that Joe Biden is going to be speaking to the country in about 10 minutes' time. Of course, we'll bring you that when he does. But let's have a look now inside the House chamber, and you can see here Capitol Police, these photographs, drawing their guns at protesters who are attempting to enter the chamber. So those are the police on the inside of the chamber. That's the famous room that you see at the State. Look at this. This is Capitol Police with their guns drawn as protesters smash the windows looking into the Capitol Rotunda, which is where members until about an hour or so ago had been debating the US electoral process. I mean, here you have members of Congress, as both the Congresswoman from South Carolina, Republican, said to us, and the Democratic Congressman just said to us, they had been debating the process of democracy, the peaceful transfer of power. And as the mob breached security and violently tried to storm the chamber. We don't know exactly what the situation is in the rotunda at the moment, but there you see the police with their guns drawn. Let's go to Lebu Deseko. She's in the basement of the Capitol building. Lebu, you're still in the cafeteria, I understand. What are you being told by police at the moment?
Well, the main thing police have told us is that we're going to be here for quite some time. And we are kind of watching what's been happening on the TV there. You can hear audible gasps when you see those protesters breaking windows, smashing windows in the Capitol building, climbing in, getting onto the floor and sitting in the chairs where proceedings were taking place really not that long ago. Just to explain where we are, we were in the building where members of the House of Representatives have their offices where they do their work. We were evacuated from there. Police said you have to move through to this tunnel. There's an adjoining tunnel that takes you through to the Capitol, and we are now in the cafeteria. It's quite interesting that Donald Trump, just a couple of days ago, said that America goes around the world telling people how to run their elections, but we can't even run our own. I think that a lot of people will find this quite ironic that you have a president of the United States of America who refuses to accept the results of the election and effectively has got what he wants. The certification process has been suspended for the day, and we'll have to see how things unfold. But yeah, everybody here is really quite shocked. Really, images I thought I would never see in this country.
Lebu, I don't know if you have a camera person with you, if they can perhaps just pan the camera around and you can explain a little bit where you are and who's down there with you. I can see a few people in the background standing around, but who's been ushered down into the cafeteria? Is there security with you? Tell us a little bit more about what you can see down there and who's there.
I'm not entirely sure if the camera is able to pan. We're doing everything on kind of iPhone, and just really trying to use the resources that we have. The members of the press were kind of ushered down into this tunnel. Some are still in the tunnel. We came into the cafeteria part. You may be able to see there are security. They closed off the door there, so you're not really meant to be going in and out. Some of the people here are members
leave the room that you're in, is that right?
Working here. Well, no, we're not supposed to. There's a screen up in front of us to stop you going in and out, and the door has been shut. I can see a member of the security. He looks like he's coming in now. But you will see that the two TVs are on, that's what everybody is glued to, and that's what we have been, you know, where's the audible gasps, that's what we're seeing, these images. I mean, it's just incredible that people manage to get up there and climbing up on the Capitol in the way that they are, actually getting inside and onto the floor as well.
And Lebu, I mean, this was not unexpected, right? I mean, you went down to Capitol Hill today, covering Washington. These are, by the way, the live pictures that we can see from inside. That is the rotunda of Capitol Hill. So that is under that main dome that you see, that shot that you see from outside, the iconic shot where late leaders lie in state, and now the protesters are inside the rotunda. So clearly they have not moved out yet. We've been told that security has been reinforced, but those protesters have not been moved outside yet. I mean, Lebu, we knew that today was going to be tense in Washington. We had been warned by the mayor and the mayor's office not to go downtown. Residents of Washington had been told not to go downtown. We knew that extra security had been called in. I know that nobody was expecting it to be like this, but it does seem that the security just was nothing like enough, doesn't it?
Well, look, there were these warnings. The mayor Muriel Bowser had told people that live in DC not to come downtown today. You are right, but as you say, I don't think anybody imagined that they would breach the security of this building in this way. You'll know that when you come to the Capitol, the security is quite serious. You don't mess about with them. So certainly, I never expected that anybody would even try. Really, it's just really something I didn't expect. I started out this day saying in my reports that, whatever Donald Trump thinks, the process may be delayed, but by the end of the day, Joe Biden will be confirmed as president-elect of this country. What he has managed to do is certainly delay the process. The proceedings are suspended for the day, as far as we know. In terms of security measures going forward, the mayor has declared a curfew from 6 p.m. tonight across the whole of DC until tomorrow morning. Obviously, emergency workers and also essential workers, media are exempt from that. That again shows how seriously it is being taken. I think the fear that people had was some clashes between protesters and Trump supporters and counter-protesters on the streets of DC, but I certainly hadn't in my mind made space for that happening inside the building of the Capitol.
Okay, Lebu, stay tight, I'm sure we'll be coming back to you soon, and take care there in the cafeteria of the Capitol building. We're just getting also news from the governor of Virginia, who says that Virginia, which is the neighboring state to Washington, D.C., just across the river, is going to be sending security reinforcements to Virginia at the mayor's request, sending in the Virginia National Guard to try and help with what is clearly a security disaster here in the nation's capital, in the very seat of government. The fact that it was so easy for these protesters, frankly, to breach those security defenses. But they had come from a rally at which Donald Trump had been goading protesters, really, and saying that they would never concede, and saying perhaps that he would even meet them down there at Capitol Hill. Here he is speaking at a rally just a couple of hours ago, in which he called the protesters patriotic and said that they should make their voices heard at Capitol Hill.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Today we will see whether Republicans stand strong for integrity of our elections, but whether or not they stand strong for our country. I want to thank you all. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you all for being here. This is incredible. Thank you very much.
Okay, that was Donald Trump speaking, a speech at which he really went to war with the Republican Party, or those members of the Republican Party who have not supported his unsubstantiated allegations that this election was stolen from him. Of course, there hasn't been any proof for that, but he was attacking by name some of those Republicans and calling them weak, those who didn't support his position. And we have received these pictures of the moment that the protesters pushed through security guards on the steps. These are new pictures that have just come into us. This was the moment that they breached you can see there the Capitol Hill security members and the protesters pushing up against them, and the Capitol Hill members of the Capitol Hill police kind of turn around and go back into the building to try to keep the building safe. Of course, we now know that they didn't manage to do that because those protesters just pushed their way into the building as well. My colleague Aleem Maqbool is down there on Capitol Hill. Aleem, I understand that you're outside the Capitol building. Where are you? What are you seeing?
Well, I was at the front of the Capitol building at the steps where stands have been erected for the inauguration in a couple of weeks. Those stands are now completely overrun by Trump supporters. And I've now moved to the back of the building. And again, all the way up the steps, right to the doors of the Capitol building, are people with Stop the Steal flags and Trump 2020 flags. And as I say, that they're right up to the doors of the building. Nobody is stopping them. We've only now just seen riot police deployed, but they're not close to the building, they're further away. And I've just spoken to one of the Trump supporters who breached security and got inside the building. He stormed the Capitol building. He was one of the first to do that. He just came out a short while ago. He said he was riled by those speeches that he was hearing earlier in the day. He said the message he took from them, that he needed to do something to take back control of his country. He said this was about freedom. I put to him that he and other Trump supporters have criticized some of the protests last summer after the George Floyd killing, calling them lawless. And he said, well, this is about the country, this is about freedom, and that's why this is right and that was wrong.
Do you get the impression, Aleem, that this was the plan, to storm the Capitol building?
This particular gentleman I was speaking to, Ryan Selesky, he said that it was just something that overcame the people around him when they saw there wasn't a great deal of security. They said that they felt they could easily overwhelm the security that was present, and so he said it was just a spur-of-the-moment thing. They certainly intended to march on the Capitol to get the message, as he said, to senators and to the elected officials that they wanted the election results to go back to the states and be recalculated, because they still believe in these myths about widespread fraud. But in terms of actually storming the building, it was just opportunist, according to one of the people I met who actually did storm it.
And how did the people that you've been speaking to, Aleem, how do they think this plays out? What do they think they can actually stop Joe Biden becoming president?
I asked them exactly this. What happens now? What they're expecting to come of today? They still insist that somehow it will go back to the states, because, look, this is what they're being told by Donald Trump, by certain senators, that there was widespread fraud. They're being told that constitutional lawyers, that's what Donald Trump said today, advising him, are saying this can be overturned. They believe that, and they say they will keep on going. And as that particular man said, he said the United States was not born out of stability, and if it takes storming the Capitol again, he said he'd do it.
The mayor of Washington, D.C. has imposed a curfew for 6 p.m. That's in 2.5 hours' time here in the Capitol. I'm not seeing any sign that the protesters are ready to go. This debate has been suspended about the certification of the Electoral College votes to confirm Joe Biden as the next president of the United States. So there's nothing really happening inside the Capitol. And are you getting the impression that these protesters are going to listen to that curfew and go home, or are they there for a while?
No, the mayor of Washington obviously is a Democrat. We all got an emergency warning on our phones, including all of these protesters, to say that curfew was going to be imposed, and they just scoffed. They, well, as you can imagine, said very rude slurs about the mayor here and about the D.C. police. They show no signs whatsoever of adhering to that curfew, or indeed leaving at all.
Mm-hmm. Liam, I don't know if you've heard this, but Kayleigh McEnany, the press spokesperson for President Trump, has just tweeted saying that at President Trump's direction, the National Guard is on the way, along with other federal protective services. I know that you covered the race protests last summer, and the National Guard was deployed then. If the National Guard is deployed onto Capitol Hill, what happens? How do they tackle this tense situation?
Well, they were never needed so close to the Capitol building. As I say, there are protesters right by the doors right now, all the way up the steps. I can't see the steps of the Capitol building around because they're packed with protesters. So they never had to, there was much more preparation ahead of many of the protests. They were fencing all around the White House. But having a presence of National Guard here and security forces means there's likely to be confrontation. Right now, it's relatively peaceful because they have nobody to confront here. There aren't any security forces. I saw a line, as I say, of riot police about a block away. But if there is a presence of security forces, I think people feel like they're in the mood for confrontation. I did see a little way from the Capitol that some of these protesters stood in the way of police cars that were heading in this direction, chanting USA, chanting Stop the Steal. So I think it feels like people are in the mood for confrontation here. Certainly a lot of people all around me with black jackets on, with bulletproof vests. Some have been arrested during the day, we hear, for firearms offenses. You can't carry a firearm in the city of D.C., but some people, as I say, have been arrested. I get the sense, as I say, that some people are certainly in the mood not to back down and go back to their cities all over the country that they've come from. But now they're here, they feel they want to continue to make that point.
You've been covering pro-Trump supporters for the last few years, Alim. Do you think that President Trump is in a position now where he could stop this if he wanted to? I mean, he's called for people to respect law and order, said Republican Party is the party of law and order. If he specifically and clearly and directly told these protesters to leave the Capitol and go home or retreat, would they do so, or has this got out of his control now as well?
Well, more than that, I think he's the only person that people here would listen to. They're partly here, of course, because they have been listening to him. They got the message from his very speech a few hours ago that what they needed to do to take back their country was to do it physically. And so I do get the sense that they are still very, very loyal to the man who brought them here in the first place. So I think if that message did come to them, like I say, he's just about the only person that could make them stand down right now.
And Alim, what do you, I mean, I'm watching these pictures, and in fact, I started thinking this morning with the Republicans' defeat in Georgia. We've spoken for the last, couple of years about how the Republican Party is Donald Trump's party. I'm just wondering whether we're watching the end of Trumpism or the end of the effectiveness of Trumpism, because I'm looking at pro-Trump Republican senators who are denouncing this violence and effectively saying this has gone too far. Marco Rubio calling on Donald Trump to get these people to stand down. Is this how Trumpism ends?
So then, Kat, you have other senators who intended and already started the process of a futile attempt to overturn the election results purely to ingratiate themselves, one would imagine, with a president who has also, remember, raised an awful lot of money over the last month or so from some of the people all around me now to fight legally the election result, cases which, of course, he's lost 60 times over across the country, but he is still managing to certainly mobilize people, to get them to donate, and there is clearly a faction of the party that feels that if they want to remain in power that they have to somehow ingratiate themselves to Donald Trump because his base comes with that. So there is this huge split. I don't think we can say as yet whether it's the end of Trumpism because clearly there is a fraction of the party that feels that it's still very much alive, and that is why they have to pander to it and enable this ploy by Donald Trump, even though a lot of them acknowledge that the election has long been lost many times over.
Yeah, okay, Alima Bull, thank you very much for joining us. You do wonder what this does to the support for people like Senator Ted Cruz and Senator Josh Hawley, who were the senators who led the revolt, if you like, inside the US Senate against the certification of the election of Joe Biden. And I'm just watching the Twitter feeds of senior Republicans. There is a lot of dismay in senior Republican circles at what is happening right now and at these scenes and the fact that they are being watched right around the world. People are very aware of how this looks, and it looks bad for American democracy and for the peaceful transition and transfer of power. This is not what is supposed to happen in this country, and it is not winning those particular senators any support amongst many of their friends and colleagues up in the US Senate. Kayleigh McEnany, I mentioned this earlier, press spokesperson for Donald Trump and the White House, has tweeted at President Trump's direction, the National Guard is on the way, along with other federal protective services. We reiterate President Trump's call against violence and to remain peaceful, but no sign yet, you heard Alima Bull saying it there, no sign yet that these protesters think that they need to leave the Capitol building. They look like they are there for a while. Our North America reporter Anthony Zerka is joining us as well. Anthony, you're watching these scenes. What are you thinking?
It is a remarkable day in Washington, D.C. You know what I'm thinking? It's reminding me of what happened in Michigan, in Lansing, Michigan, the state capitol building there, just a few months ago with the protests that broke out against the coronavirus pandemic restrictions. You saw Donald Trump supporters storm the Capitol building there and confront police and threaten Republican and Democratic legislators in the Michigan State House. At the time, thinking, my gosh, this is an amazing development in a U.S. state capitol for something like this to happen. And then to see it happen here in Washington, D.C., not just some state capitol, but the United States Capitol itself. It makes me wonder what kind of security precautions were put into place, how something like this could be allowed to happen. You saw Donald Trump talking about this day, talking about these protests for weeks in advance, circling January 6th on his calendar, saying this was going to be when his supporters would make their voices heard. Well, they certainly have made their voices heard, but probably not in a way that most members of the Republican Party would feel comfortable with.
Anthony, we're starting to get some overseas reaction now. Jens Stoltenberg, the Secretary General of NATO, tweeting shocking scenes in Washington, D.C. The outcome of this democratic election must be respected. The Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, also saying that he is watching these scenes in Washington unfold with concern. Transitions are often sensitive times in American politics. There have been several times in modern history where you've had national security crises unfold during transition periods. What does this do to America's security, given that China is watching, Russia is watching, North Korea is watching these scenes unfold?
As an American watching this and listening to foreign leaders offer their support and concern about what is happening here in the United States, it is heartbreaking to see this play out in the U.S. And I think, Americans like to think that their government, their nation, provides some sort of example for the world. They talk a lot about American exceptionalism, about how special the United States is and how it's a beacon of democracy, an example for all of the countries all over the world. And to have something like this happen, where the legislative chambers of the U.S. government have been breached, that the proceedings of the U.S. Congress has been forced to be suspended, that members of Congress are sheltering in place for their own security. I think it's such a really bad example. The kind of example that's setting to the world is extremely disheartening and concerning.
We've had several senior Republicans now denounce what is happening. It puts a spotlight, doesn't it, Anthony, on Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Josh Hawley, the senators who led the revolt against the certification process of Joe Biden as the next president.
It does. It's difficult to imagine how they're going to be able to proceed, how Congress is going to be able to go back into session and resume the counting of these electoral votes, and for these members of Congress to give the same speeches that they were planning on giving, challenging the results of the election, saying that the vote was stolen, saying that there needs to be further investigation into all these widespread allegations of fraud. It just seems like the wrong tone to strike at this moment. And, you know, there had been some movement, I think, in Congress, particularly in the Senate, over the past few days, after Donald Trump's phone call to the Georgia Secretary of State, trying to get him to change the vote down there. After the results of the Georgia runoff elections just yesterday, there's movement in the Senate from some Republicans to try to distance themselves from these challenges. You saw people like Tom Cotton, a very conservative senator from Arkansas who is usually an ally of Donald Trump's, say that he was going to support certification and that this was the wrong way to challenge the results of the election. Also, Tom Cotton's looking pretty good right now. Senator Mike Lee of Utah, another one who's spoken out against this. Mitt Romney, another one who called this an insurrection. They're starting to look like they may have the political high ground, and people like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, who were putting their political futures, staking their future presidential ambitions on siding with Donald Trump supporters and siding with these challenges, it's starting to look like that may come at a political price for them.
Anthony, what do you think this does? We've been talking about the Republican Party as the party of Donald Trump. Does this change that assessment?
You know, we'll have to wait and see. You know, there have been many times where we said, oh my gosh, this is going to damage Donald Trump, that this is going to strip his power. People are going to start to distance themselves from him for one reason or another, and it never turns out that way. But this is obviously a historic moment. These images that we're seeing now are going to be burned in Americans' memories for years to come. And already Donald Trump's political power was waning. He only has a few more weeks as president of the United States. After that, there's a question about whether he will be able to kind of maintain this stranglehold he has on the Republican Party. You saw his veto of the defense bill overturned by both chambers of Congress. You saw, of course, the candidates he was supporting in Georgia apparently lose their runoff elections last night. So his influence had been waning. And I think that this is going to give grounds for his opponents within the party to try to really push him back and take the party in a different direction.
A lot has changed in American politics in the space of the last 48 hours. The center of power is shifting. It's fluid and it's not quite clear how that's going to shape out, but things are changing here in the Capitol. I just want to read out this statement from Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leaders in Congress. We are calling on President Trump to demand that all protesters leave the U.S. Capitol and Capitol grounds immediately. So there is pressure growing on the president to put out a more forceful statement. We've heard from his press secretary. He has so far not called on these protesters to leave the Capitol grounds. Here's a tweet from the Vice President, Mike Pence. He has tweeted for Mr. Trump's supporters to leave. The violence and destruction taking place at the U.S. Capitol must stop, and it must stop now. Anyone involved must respect law enforcement officers and immediately leave the building. We haven't heard that yet from President Trump himself, but the pressure is growing on the White House and on the president himself to put out a more forceful statement to end these scenes that we are seeing. Here's a recap of some of the pictures we have seen from inside the House chamber. There you see Capitol Police with their guns drawn, trying to stop protesters from entering the chamber. This is the chamber where debates take place, where the State of the Union address takes place. You've seen it around the world, these images, but you have not seen images of Capitol Police with their guns drawn as mobs protest and storm inside the US Capitol. Seems we have not seen in American democracy before.
Hello there. We'll start off with a look at the weather picture across the United States, where we're looking at a lot of low clouds take us into Wednesday across a good portion of the upper Midwest. Along with that low cloud, we have some fairly dense fog patches to start the day as well. So it is a slow start here. Further westwards, we do have a little bit of rain to come, some snow across some of the northern states, stretching across the Dakotas, and a more significant weather system pushing into the Pacific Northwest. This bringing snow to the Cascades and the Olympics above 800 meters elevation. Another 15 to 25 centimetres of snow, but heavy rain lower down. That could cause some localised flooding issues here as we go through the next 24 hours or so. Now, looking at the weather picture across Central America, got a few showers to come across parts of Honduras and Nicaragua. Cool weather pushing into Cuba. We've got a cold front here, just bringing some thicker cloud across central areas. 1 or 2 spots of rain falling from that. Now, we could see some severe thunderstorms breaking out across Buenos Aires province as we go through Wednesday, maybe around 50 to 80 millimetres of rain, a risk of some hailstorms mixed in as well. Heavy thundery downpours also for the southeast of Peru and Bolivia could bring some localised flooding. Heavy snow working into eastern areas of Spain. Now, particularly above 900 metres elevation, we could see something like 20 to 40 centimetres of snow building in as we end the week here. There will also be some heavy snow for West Russia, Belarus and into portions of Lithuania as we end the week in Europe. Now for Africa, we've got a large area of high pressure in the upper atmosphere, keeping a lot of dry weather across northern areas of Africa and warm weather, 24 degrees Celsius in both Tripoli and in Cairo on Thursday. It's reasonably warm as well across a good chunk of the Middle East, a few showers building across central portions of Saudi Arabia. These not too heavy, although the ones towards the southwest could be a little bit heavier. Got a trough down towards the Arabian Sea. That's going to be bringing some enhanced downpours across into portions of southern India over the next few days. We've seen some very heavy rain in Tamil Nadu and Chennai as well over the last 24 hours, and there will be further heavy showers and thunderstorms here. Extreme weather heading into Japan in terms of some incredibly strong gusts of wind, 110 km/h winds, heavy snow coming right down to sea level around the western side of Honshu and Hokkaido. We are looking at some significant accumulations of snow, maybe 50 centimetres, maybe 70 centimetres in places over the high ground here. So there is a significant risk of seeing some disruption in Japan and very cold weather as well. We've got heavy thundery downpours that will get more extensive across the south of Thailand and the Malaysia area as well over the next few days, where I think we will see some flooding. Monsoon downpours continue across the Northern Territory, and Queensland's seeing some heavier rain, more widespread as well as we get towards Thursday and Friday. And that in itself could cause some localised surface water flooding as well. We've got low pressure for New Zealand, bringing cloudy skies and rain at times on Thursday. That's your latest weather.
China's New Year's Eve. A lot of people don't want to leave their homes for fear of catching the coronavirus. The province where the coronavirus first broke out is now going to be locked down.
Never could people in Italy have conceived of the idea that they'd need this to be able to move within their own country.
Across Spain, in every public area now, it is mandatory to wear a mask.
With millions of Americans losing their jobs, lines at food pantries are getting longer.
South Africa has the 5th highest number of coronavirus cases in the world.
We've got one person dying every minute here in Brazil.
This setup is all about protecting South Korea from a fresh outbreak of coronavirus.
The reopening of Wuhan is a hugely symbolic moment.
This is Delhi Airport, where flights are resuming after being shut down for 2 months.
It wasn't long ago that people were queuing for COVID-19 tests, but now it's the vaccine.
All our lives have changed. How we live, work, and shop. And with these changes, a new economy is emerging, from the fields to warehouses to the parcel at your door. New business models are replacing the old. Which sectors will prosper and which will fail? Join us as we examine in depth what lies ahead for business in the age of COVID-19. New Economy, on BBC World News and online.
This is BBC News. Chaos on Capitol Hill, both inside and outside the building itself.
Lawmakers lock horns over certifying Joe Biden as the next president as pro-Trump protesters storm Congress, forcing their way into the chamber.
These are scenes from Capitol Hill where protesters have climbed the steps of the famous building. We have seen violent clashes inside, and one woman is in a critical condition after being shot in the chest. Astonishing pictures from the Senate floor itself. A striking moment here when a protester speaks directly from the pulpit. Another abseiled down to the floor of Congress.
Only hours earlier, the president told protesters the election had been stolen, and he urged them to march on the Capitol.
And we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them. Because you'll never take back our country with weakness.
Since then, Mr. Trump has tweeted a message calling on protesters to remain peaceful. The Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer responds, "It's a little late for that, don't you think?"
Hello, I'm Caddy Kay in a very tumultuous Washington, D.C. Christian Fraser's in London for us. American politics is all about power, who has it, who wants it, and how it is handed from one person to the next. And today we've had a mishmash of all of that and then some. Here in the Capitol, we've seen extraordinary scenes on Capitol Hill as protesters clashed with police and stormed the building, forcing their way into the House chamber and the congressional offices.
Let me show you some of the pictures. This one of the armed standoff at the entrance to the House chamber. There were violent confrontations outside the hall, but police, it seemed, were ill-prepared and were quickly overwhelmed. One protester even lowered himself into the Senate chamber. Capitol Police had tried reinforcing the door of the lower house, the House chamber, to try and stop protesters getting in. And outside, where police lines were breached, there were protesters smashing windows and forcing their way in. Another was photographed sitting on the raised rostrum. Well, just minutes before it all got out of hand, the Republican members of Congress had staged a protest of their own, putting a halt to the certification process that would officially confirm Joe Biden's election victory. But that was quickly abandoned. Congressional leaders were told to shelter in their offices. The vice president was evacuated. It was an extraordinary, shameful few hours, which the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, had seen coming.
This election were overturned by mere allegations from the losing side, our democracy would enter a death spiral. We'd never see the whole nation accept an election again. Every 4 years would be a scramble for power at any cost.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, I have covered American politics for 20 years. I have never seen scenes like these, but these protesters had just come from listening to President Trump speaking outside the White House, and here's what he had said to the crowd.
After this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol. And we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. And we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them. Because you'll never take back our country with weakness.
President Trump speaking just a little earlier. Let me show you then some of the live pictures from the Capitol. We've heard in the last few minutes from our correspondent who is down there, Ali Makboul, that still police are to get control of the situation around the Capitol building. You can see that many of them are still up there on the steps and still trying to get in and around the building. Some of them are drifting away, but still a heavy protest outside the Capitol building, and no sign whatsoever at the moment of the National Guard and the Capitol Police getting control of the situation.
No, we are expecting the Virginia Guard as well. By the way, Vice President and President-elect Joe Biden is going to be speaking soon. So, of course, as soon as he does, we will go to that and bring you what he has to say. But let's speak to Elizabeth Newman, who served as an official in President Trump's Department of Homeland Security. Elizabeth, thank you very much for joining us. I just want to get your reaction to what you're seeing up there on Capitol Hill.
You know, we were very concerned that something might happen today. I still cannot wrap my minds around some of the pictures that we have seen of the Capitol Police being overwhelmed, of people making it into the Senate chambers, of congressmen and women who are holed up in their offices concerned for their safety. In all of the scenarios that I had envisioned, I didn't think it would.
Olivia, I'm just going to jump in, sorry, because Elizabeth, sorry, Joe Biden is speaking, and we'll come back to you.
Speak to you. I initially was going to talk about the economy, but all of you have been watching what I've been watching. At this hour, our democracy is under unprecedented assault, unlike anything we've seen in modern times. An assault on the citadel of liberty, the Capitol itself. An assault on the people's representatives and the Capitol Hill police, sworn to protect them, and the public servants who work at the heart of our republic. An assault on the rule of law like few times we've ever seen it. An assault on the most sacred of American undertakings, the doing of the people's business. Let me be very clear. The scenes of chaos at the Capitol do not reflect a true America, do not represent who we are. What we're seeing are a small number of extremists dedicated to lawlessness. This is not dissent, it's disorder, it's chaos, it borders on sedition, and it must end now. I call on this mob to pull back and allow the work of democracy to go forward. You've heard me say before in different contexts, the words of a president matter, no matter how good or bad that president is. At their best, the words of a president can inspire. At their worst, they can incite. And therefore, I call on President Trump to go on national television now to fulfill his oath and defend the Constitution and demand an end to this siege, to storm the Capitol, to smash windows, to occupy offices, the floor of the United States Senate, rummaging through desks, on the Capitol, on the House of Representatives, threatening the safety of duly elected officials. It's not protest, it's insurrection. The world's watching. Like so many other Americans, I am genuinely shocked and saddened that our nation, so long the beacon of light and hope for democracy, has come to such a dark moment. Through war and strife, America's endured much. And we will endure here, and we will prevail again, and will prevail now. The work of the moment and the work of the next 4 years must be the restoration of democracy, of decency, honor, respect, the rule of law. Just plain, simple decency. The renewal of politics. It's about solving problems, looking out for one another, not stoking the flames of hate and chaos. As I said, America's about honor, decency, respect, tolerance. That's who we are. That's who we've always been. The certification of the Electoral College vote is supposed to be a sacred ritual to affirm purposes, to affirm the majesty of American democracy. But today's reminder, a painful one, that democracy is fragile, and to preserve it requires people of goodwill, leaders with the courage to stand up, who are devoted not to the pursuit of power, or the personal interest pursuits of their own selfish interest at any cost, but of the common good. Think what our children watching television are thinking. Think what the rest of the world is looking at. For nearly 2.5 centuries, we, the people, in search of a more perfect union, have kept our eyes on that common good. America is so much better than what we're seeing today. Watching the scenes from the Capitol, I was reminded, as I prepared other speeches in the past, I was reminded of the words of Abraham Lincoln in his annual message to Congress, whose work has today been interrupted by chaos. Here's what Lincoln said. He said, "We shall nobly save or merely lose the last best hope on earth." Went on to say, "The way is plain, peaceful, generous, just. A way which, if followed, the world will forever applaud, and God must forever bless." The way is plain here too. That's who we are. It's the way of democracy, of respect, of decency, of honor, and commitment as patriots to this nation.
그렇죠.
Notwithstanding what I saw today and we're seeing today, I remain optimistic about the incredible opportunities. There has never been anything we can't do when we do it together. And this God-awful display today is bringing home to every Republican and Democrat and Independent in the nation that we must step up. This is the United States of America. There's never, ever, 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 ever been a thing we've tried to do that we've done it together. We've not been able to do it. So President Trump, step up. May God bless America. May God protect our troops and all those folks at the Capitol who are trying to preserve order. Thank you, and I'm sorry to have kept you waiting.
President-elect Joe Biden there denouncing what he is seeing, calling this an insurrection, saying the world is watching, our children are watching. He said that democracy is under unprecedented assault, and he called there at the end on President Trump to step up and made an address really to the country, but also to the rest of the world, saying America is so much better than what we're seeing. I think Elizabeth Newman is still with us, former Department of Homeland Security official from the Trump administration. Elizabeth, you heard the former Vice President and President-elect Joe Biden there. Pressure is growing on Donald Trump from Republicans and Democrats alike to stop this, to try to stop this, to do something more forceful, to say something more forceful. Do you think President Trump still has control of these protesters? If he came out with a tweet, if he came out and said, leave now, would they do it?
I think it would help. But I do think that even just looking at the chatter that I've seen online over the last few days, there are aspects of the people that are in that crowd that are taking advantage of the crowd. They're taking advantage of the chaos to incite violence, and they're definitely looking at opportunities to fulfill their longer term objectives of societal collapse. So while I think if he were to speak out, it absolutely would have an effect on some of his core base who really do listen to him. But there are other elements that are intermingled here that will continue on with what they have started.
Elizabeth, you were, you've been tasked with national security. You worked in this administration within national security. A lot of people around the world will be slightly shocked, actually, that it was so easy to get into the Capitol building today, especially given the warnings that were out there and the talk that we've had from the president through the course of the week about what a sizable event it was going to be. Where was the protection of the Citadel of Liberty?
That's a great phrase that Vice President Biden used. I was shocked by that too. I was watching things as they unfurled, and I saw Capitol Police moving really quickly, and it just did not make sense. It told me that they were not prepared. I'm sure that they will do after-action reports. They're in the middle of a crisis, so I hesitate to criticize too much, but they were not prepared. They should have been. There is no excuse for them not to have been prepared. Capitol Police is separate and apart from all other executive branch federal law enforcement. So there might be a breakdown there in terms of them not necessarily taking as many precautions as we saw out of the DC Metro Police and out of the National Guard being called up in advance of what was known to be a large gathering that had planned protests all across the city. But no doubt that this is it really is kind of a catastrophic failure on the part of securing the Capitol, and we will need to take a look at making sure this never happens again.
Okay, Elizabeth Newman, thank you very much for joining us. As former Vice President and President-elect Biden said, American democracy is under unprecedented assault as we are speaking to you. Just quick news update. Both NBC News, CBS News, ABC News are confirming that the Democratic Senate candidate in Georgia, John Ossoff, has won his U.S. Senate race. This effectively puts the U.S. Senate in the hands of Democrats, in the hands of Joe Biden. There's a lot of pressure, of course, on some of Mr. Trump's supporters in the Senate at the moment. You've got supporters there that you see them climbing, breaching the walls by literally climbing over them. You should go on social media and have a quick look at some of the comparisons
it's
of
like you say,
countries around the
Cathy,
world where democracy and parliaments have been under assault, and it looks awfully similar to what we're seeing right now here in Washington.
But it's like you say, Cathy, so much has changed in US politics in just the last 48 hours. I mean, power shifting, yes, materially, in terms of control of the US Senate, but also the political ground, political influence is shifting, perhaps crucially, away from Trumpism.
Yeah, I feel that we have seen a shift both with the Republicans' defeat in Georgia in a legislative sense, but also in terms of these images will be played all around the country, and they don't do any favors to those people in Capitol Hill who supported the effort to not have Joe Biden certified as the next president of the United States. Let's go inside the Capitol building now, and our correspondent Lebu Diseko is there. I think, Lebu, you're still in the cafeteria. You were showing me around it earlier and saying that you couldn't get in or outside of that room. What's the situation down there at the moment?
We're still inside the same spot, Cathy. We are not allowed to go out. As I said to you earlier, we have been in the building where members of the House of Representatives have their offices and where they work from. We have been reporting on the proceedings in the House where they did the certification of the Electoral College votes, and we have just heard that objection from the state of Arizona's results. I mean, it is quite something watching the scenes play out on TV. There are two TVs in here. The protesters are in front of the Capitol building. We were on that very grass just this morning when we first arrived. That's where we were. I don't think anyone of us could have predicted that the day would end like this. If anything, the most we predicted was perhaps the lengthened process of debate and voting with the objections that were being raised. Really quite powerful address from Joe Biden, who just heard, saying the world is watching, calling on President Trump to go on national TV and essentially tell his supporters to stop doing what they're doing. We've not seen any sign of that at the moment. Mike Pence has done so, but we really have been sure that any supporters are going to listen to the Vice President at this time.
Okay, Lebo, thank you very much. Apologies for the sound quality on that line, but I think we picked up most of what Lebo was saying. Let's go outside the building then and speak to our correspondent, Aleem Maqbool, who's been watching the protests from outside. Aleem, give us an impression, if you would, of where you think the situation is outside the Capitol building.
Well, still absolutely astonishing scenes I'm looking at right now. With people still wandering around the Capitol grounds at will. They're all the way up the stairs, right up to the doors of the Capitol building on all sides of the building. I've just taken a walk right around the building, and there's still very little security presence. We've seen just in the last 5 minutes, just out of the sort of upper levels of the Capitol building, some security forces have come outside. But otherwise, as I say, people still roaming around at will, and the sense is that they are going to stick around for a while yet.
Do you think, Aleem, that they were planning this? Was this, you've been speaking to the supporters, all afternoon. Was this what they wanted?
They were certainly planning to march on the Capitol. That's what they were told to do by Donald Trump in no uncertain terms in his speech a few hours ago. I don't think from those that I've spoken to 2 people now who were among those inside the building, neither of whom it appeared had expected to do that. They just were opportunists in a sense. They got here, they realized that they could overwhelm security, and so they did. And the first person I spoke to, I said, well, what did you do when you got inside? He said, well, I just started knocking on doors. And then we found ourselves outside the chamber, and then he said he saw lots of security come out, and that's when he decided to leave. A woman I spoke to who got inside said she'd been injured because she got out of a broken window to get out of the building when she saw security coming her way. So not a sense I'm getting, it's a small sample size of those who actually broke into the building, but not a sense that they had planned to get inside, but they certainly wanted to come to the Capitol and somehow send a message to elected officials that they needed to overturn this election, encouraged, of course, by the words of their president, who is still peddling, of course, all these conspiracy theories about widespread fraud, although there's no evidence to suggest that was the case, and he's had around 60 legal cases thrown out of court across the country.
And one presumes, Aleem, it's going to take the Capitol Police a long time to be able to give this building back to the legislators, because we've had reports of pipe bombs around the building, we've seen pictures of people in Nancy Pelosi's office. There'll have to be a complete security sweep, even once they've got rid of these protesters, before business can resume.
And you also have to assume that while there's no confrontation now, it's peaceful. That's because there's nobody to confront. There aren't the security forces around here. One would imagine somewhere along the line that there might be that confrontation when the steps of the Capitol are being cleared, because right now I'm looking at the steps that were all set up for the inauguration in 2 weeks' time, and they're entirely covered by Trump supporters.
Okay, Aleem, thank you very much. Obviously it's kind of chaotic down there, and it can get chaotic in these situations too, technically, as well. But Aleem, thank you very much. Let's go to Member of Congress Lou Correa, who joins us now from inside the Capitol building. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us. Can you tell us where you are and what's happened to you over the last hour or so?
I'm still in the building, and I'm here ready to resume my job to certify this election and make sure we move to a new president January 20th. This is an embarrassment to our country. This is not democracy. And this president who wants to be a dictator has whipped up his supporters. And let me tell you something. Those security guards, the Capitol Police, are heavily armed with weapons. The only reason you don't have people dead on the streets right now is because the Capitol Police use restraint. They essentially took care of people's First Amendment, made sure they had freedom of speech. But if those Capitol Police would have started
in the chamber when the protesters, the rioters, breached the security and got into the building? Were you ushered out of the rotunda? Where were you? And what have Capitol Police told you to do?
I was in the chamber. I was on the second floor watching our constitutionally protected debate of accepting our electoral college votes from around the country. We had just began to debate the Arizona ballots, the electoral college ballots, when all of a sudden you saw Nancy Pelosi, other members of leadership, both Democrat and Republican leadership, quickly escorted off the floor. Then you began to feel that something was not right when people were the guards all around the chamber said, get under a desk, get low. If they start coming through the doors of the chamber, then I saw some of our security guards begin to take furniture and fortify the main door to the chamber with their arms, side weapons, cold, ready to fire, and you could hear the protesters on the other side